Good evening. My name is Joyce Jackson. I am your host for the Oklahoma City Freedom Fiesta celebration of the 62nd anniversary of the Oklahoma City Sit-In Movement, which was held August the 19th, 1958, led by Clara Luper, an educator, a civil rights leader, activist, and the godmother of the Oklahoma Civil Rights Movement. I am one of Ms. Luper's kids. She was my teacher. I participated in the Oklahoma City Sit-In Movement, in the Oklahoma City Sanitation Strike, and was a member of the NAACP Youth Council. For the last 2 years, the Clara Luper Legacy Committee and the Oklahoma Historical Society has held this celebration at the Oklahoma History Center in Oklahoma City. But due to the COVID-19 pandemic, this year's event is being shared online. Welcome. Our program begins with a musical tribute to Clara Luper written by Jabee. Jabee is one of the kids that participated in the Oklahoma City Sit-Ins, a classmate of Miss Luper's son, Calvin Luper, and a member of the NAACP Youth Council. Jabee and the Jamistics are the best of Oklahoma musicians, playing roots and reggae since 2010. The members of the group are Jabee Lambert on vocals and percussion, Kent Joyce, drums, Carl Wilbur, keyboards, and Garcia Tarver, keyboards.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. I'll rise up. It's time to go to work. Oh yeah. It was August 19th, 1958. Oklahoma City was slow to integrate. Black and white restrooms could easily be found, and the smell of segregation was all over our town. Now the policies of the establishment was a horrible sin. Yes, it was. They say go round to the back door, boy, if you wanna get in. The back door mentality seemed to be the order of the day. Ah, yeah. They say go round to the back door, boy, if you wanna get paid. Go round to the back door if you wanna eat. Oh yeah. Go round to the back door if you want a seat. Ah yeah. Where? On the back of the bus. On the back of the bus. Ah yeah, yeah, yeah. Just when it looked like the biggest would win, y'all, a lady named Clara stepped in, y'all. A lady named Clara Luper, you know. She said, I can't take this injustice. Not 1 minute more, not 1 minute more. On this side. Rise up! Time to go to work. Oh, yeah. Rise up! Time to go to work. Now she organized the youth of the NAACP. And we marched downtown singing we shall be free. They say we shall overcome someday. We shall overcome someday. Deep in my heart refused to serve. And the black and white faces showed up on the sidewalks and curbs. Oh yeah. Al's Ice Cream. You remember Al? They said they'd never hire nobody black. But Clara sit-in demonstration broke Jim Crow's back. At a mall restaurant said we don't serve blacks. But Clara said, that's okay. We don't eat blacks anyway. Yeah. Just when it looked like the bigots would win, y'all. A lady named Clara stepped in, y'all. A lady named Clara Luper, you know. She said, I can't take this injustice. No more, not 1 minute more. Shibbo. 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 Now her list of accomplishments go on and on and on and on. Too many to mention in this song. But I must admit that my favorite one is when she took a bus load of us to something called a March on Washington. Then we saw the king tell us of his dream. I have a dream that one day the children in our nation will not be judged by the color of their skin, no, but by the content of their character. Oh yeah. The content of the character. Oh yeah. So we say, oi oi oh, Clara Luper. Oi oi oh, freedom fighter. Oi oi oh, Clara Luper. Oi oi oh, freedom fighter. Oi oi oh, Clara Luper. Oi oi oh, freedom fighter. Oi oi oh, Clara Luper. Oi, 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 freedom fighter. Where are you, Clara? We need you again. Aye, 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 aye. Shibu.
Let us pray. Our Father in heaven, the Father of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, humbly, sincerely, and reverently we come to thy most holy and divine presence. We come with thanksgiving in our hearts for your goodness and kindness, your loving and tender mercies toward all of us. Thank you for this day, for it is the day that you have made, and we will rejoice in it. We invoke now your divine presence and your divine blessings upon this special occasion as we celebrate and as we commemorate these years of the sit-in demonstration, which led to the opening of public accommodation, not only in our city, but across our nation. We thank you, our Father, for the life and the legacy of Clara Luper, who is resting now after a life journey of fighting for justice. Bless the other sit-inners, those who are yet alive, and also to those who have been called from labor to refreshment. Continue, our Father, your blessings upon all of us as we continue in the struggle for justice and equality for all people. Bless your servant, the Reverend Amos Brown, who have many battle scars from this journey, the civil rights movement. Give him courage as he finds words of inspiration and encouragement during this celebration. We thank you now, and we claim the victory was in the name of your Son, Christ Jesus. Amen.
I like this part right here. Come on. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the add a little something to it, just to encourage you. We're going to take you to church later. Let's go! We'll keep marching, fighting till the victory is won. To all my brothers out there. Hold your head up, brother, till the victory is won. To all my sisters in the struggle. Keep believing, sister, till the victory is won. Till that day. Till that day comes. Hey! Let us march on. To victory. Till victory.
Good evening, and welcome to the 62nd anniversary of the Freedom Fiesta. The pages of American history are filled with the lives of great men and women who by their sacrificial lives have changed the course of history. And we are here today to celebrate that history. On August 19th, 1958, a group of young people entered the Katz Drug Store. Thus begins our story. Prior to that, we had an opportunity to present a play, Brother President, that was written by my mother, Clara Luper. We went to the NAACP National Convention to present Brother President, the story of Reverend Martin Luther King, Jr. Well, on our way to New York City, we had an opportunity to go the northern route. And what's so significant about that is that many of us never had an opportunity even to leave Oklahoma. During that time, Oklahoma was one of the most segregated states in the Union. It was colored here, whites here. Well, our greatest lesson was taught on that trip to New York City, because for the first time in our lives, we had an opportunity to sit down like we were anybody else in America and have a hamburger and a Coke. What's so significant about that? Because in Oklahoma at that time, the only place that we could eat a hamburger and a Coke in downtown Oklahoma City was out of a brown paper sack. But we had to return to Oklahoma, and we returned by going back to the South, facing the age-old discrimination and segregation that we had become accustomed to. After meeting, a group of young people decided, oh no, we like being able to go into a restaurant and sit down and drink a Coke like anyone else. And we learned in New York City, as Harriet Tubman said, a little bit of freedom is a dangerous thing. And we brought that attitude back with us. So we negotiated with the restaurant owners in Oklahoma City only to go no place, because they felt that if they would integrate their restaurants, they would lose their white support. Then we went in August on that 19th and decided that we would sit down and we would not get up until we were served a hamburger and a Coke. So we continued to come back to Katz Drug Store. They closed, we closed. They opened, we opened. It was a process that changed the course of Oklahoma history. So today we celebrate. Tomorrow we celebrate, because we realize that what we did changed the course of history. Our hats go off to the young people throughout the state and nation that decided they were not going to take it anymore and decided to do something about it. Freedom isn't free until all of us are free. So today, as we join with you in celebrating our Freedom Fiesta, we want you to be able to tell your children and your grandchildren about yourselves and how you contributed to the development of this country. Sit back and enjoy.
Well, it is my honor to bring greetings to this event on behalf of the people of Oklahoma City. 62 years ago, a courageous group of young people, and I don't mean college kids, I mean kids, went down with Clara Luper to downtown Oklahoma City and began a movement that lasted for many years thereafter, but forever changed the way we live in Oklahoma City and helped us to erase the most obvious reflections of racism and slavery that we still had here in Oklahoma City. I think in recent years, it took us a while. We have, as a community and as a broader community, finally really adopted and reflected on those events. As I grew up here in Oklahoma City, I didn't hear much about the civil rights story and Clara Luper and the sit-inners. But as I've become an adult, I have found that all communities within our city want to know more about that story. And just since I became mayor, we've made a lot of progress in making sure that that legacy lives on. We have a very active effort right now to commemorate the Katz Drug Store sit-in downtown Oklahoma City with a memorial. That effort is being chaired by Pastor Lee Cooper and local businessman John Kennedy. And since we last gathered to commemorate these events in 1958, the voters of Oklahoma City, by record margins, adopted the Clara Luper Civil Rights Center, a $25 million investment in tax dollars to commemorate the civil rights movement here in Oklahoma City, and also to help us all figure out how we translate those lessons into the changes we need to make moving forward. And I think that's a lot of what is on our mind this summer as we commemorate this anniversary again. We have new challenges that are facing us, but they're a lot like the old ones. And I find that just as we spend time patting ourselves on the backs for getting rid of Jim Crow laws, we have to remember that that progress that Clara Luper and her sit-inners made in the 1950s and 1960s was really just the first chapter. And we cannot let our appreciation and celebration of those achievements relieve us of our obligation to continue to push forward. Here in Oklahoma City, the experience, the life expectancy, the economic outcomes, the educational attainment of a young African American person who grows up at 23rd and MLK is still very, very different than a white person who grows up at 150th and Rockwell. We have to do more in our community to change that narrative, to bring equal opportunity to all people of our city, regardless of where they live or what color their skin. And those lessons we still have with us, and we still have work to do. And so even though as we look back and we appreciate the things that we've accomplished, we need to recognize that there are lessons to be gained from those past events and applied to the future that still lies ahead of us. And I think the Clara Luper Civil Rights Center, a MAPS 4 project that will roll out here in the next decade, is an integral part of that. I think bringing remembrances down into downtown Oklahoma City, like we are doing with the Katz Drug Store commemoration there, is an integral part of that effort. And I commend everybody, Marilyn Luper, Bruce Fisher, Bob Blackburn, everybody who continues to work on these efforts, continues to build this legacy here in Oklahoma City. You know, the sit-ins that we recognize tonight that occurred 62 years ago really began and inspired the whole sit-in movement of the civil rights movement. It also was one of the longest nonviolent protests that the country had ever seen, as it lasted for another 10 or 15 years. These stories are things that Oklahoma City should be proud of. And I want us to continue to teach our kids these lessons. And tonight's program is an opportunity to do so. This is going to be available in the future. And so if you're watching this and hearing these stories for the first time, or maybe you know people who haven't heard these stories, share this program with them. Share this program with your kids and help them understand what happened here in Oklahoma City and how it ties to the work we still need to do. So again, my gratitude to everybody who's put this together, who continues to work on this legacy, continues to fight for equality here in Oklahoma City. And thank you, and enjoy the rest of the program.
As we approach the 62nd anniversary of the sit-ins here in Oklahoma City, led by Mrs. Luper and the NAACP youth, it is so important, especially right now as we are still continuing to wrestle with many of the challenges that underpinned the sit-ins, the need for justice and equal access and treatment, and right now in the midst of these really challenging, important conversations around systemic racism and inequity that are still continuing in our communities and how we address that. It is so important that we not only look forward to where we need to go, but we look back to acknowledge the accomplishments and the progress that we've made in order to keep that legacy alive. As a member of the House of Representatives, it's truly been my honor to lift up Clara Luper and her voice and her legacy and her leadership in the civil rights movement, and to continue to lift up not only Mrs. Luper, but the sit-inners and the really historic and consequential actions that arose right here from Oklahoma City, that we can't let that be lost to history. To claim the importance and the significance of what happened here in Oklahoma City that inspired North Carolina, that inspired so much of what happened across this country. And if we're going to continue forward and build on that legacy and address the inequity and the injustice that still exists in our communities today, we have to understand the foundation that was laid by the sit-inners and continues, and the effort that continues today. The value that our young people have brought to this, both in 1958 and moving forward to today, as we see young people with Black Lives Matter lifting their voices to address other systemic racism and issues with policing and other systems that continue to impact our communities. That in order to get where we need to go, we have to acknowledge where we've been. I think it's true that as Oklahomans, we often are not good at either acknowledging the mistakes of our past, the things that harmed our communities, but we also haven't done a good enough job far too often of claiming the successes and owning the remarkable accomplishments that come from Oklahomans like Clara Luper, like all of the sit-inners that led peaceful protest, that stood up for justice and dared to believe in a future that was very different than a present, that dared to stand up for what was right and to do it in spite of the fact that they were told it couldn't be done, because that's how real change happens. And holding on to the legacy requires that we do both of those things. We acknowledge our mistakes and we own our successes, and we hold ourselves and each other accountable in a way that is compassionate and that is forward-looking. I consider it one of the greatest honors of my life to have been able to serve with the great John Lewis and to talk to him about Clara Luper, to talk to him about the sit-inners and their contribution to the changes that we've wrought throughout the country. And at the same time, to continue the work and the determination of lifting up those voices and correcting the mistakes of our past so that we can continue to grow into a better future. And that's what this is about, and it is an honor to be a part of it. I am so grateful to have the ability to speak to my colleagues, to work with the Smithsonian and others, to hold and honor the legacy of Clara Luper and uplift the young people today as they learn from the sit-inners and the legacy of people leaning into what was often considered impossible and doing it anyway. And I can't wait to see what happens as we move forward, as we continue this fight and our work to bend the arc of justice, the arc of history ever closer towards justice. And there is so much more work to do, but I'm grateful for the people who have done the work to hold the legacy and uphold it and those young people who are picking up the torch now and into the future. It takes all of us together to make this happen. And I am grateful to the Legacy Committee and all of their work for bringing this to light, lifting it up, and shining a light on our communities, our past, our present, and looking forward to the future.
13 Cokes and a side of freedom for 13 brave youngsters and their leader. This is a celebration of faces, a celebration of uniting races, changing the pace by putting truth in its rightful place. This is a leaving of cages. This is a coming of ages. This is as old as time and as fresh as the day's paper. This is a Marilyn versus Calvin debate stir. The beginning of the beginning. Walking and marching, standing for hours, sitting and waiting for many more. Oh, didn't we have it easy? To sit on our bottoms at the bottom of the white man's food chain in the white man's food domain and can't get a Coke? Didn't we have it easy? Doing it up lavish as we sat off our feet. 13 baby warriors occupying these seats glued, eyes glued, and scowling at our hair. Eyes glued and firing daggers at our backs, eyes glued and darting fire at our skin. Yes, we're here for one of the first ever sit-ins, sitting with our pride by our side, with our strength and our fear by our side, with our leader, our teacher, our mother of the civil rights, our friend, Mrs. Clara Luper by our side, with God surrounding us, sustaining us, and with the Constitution knocking down Katz door. Oh, we sat in those chairs and we sat some more. 13 Cokes, please. And we sat some more, and we did not move when the names came flying. Dummy and monkey, ugly, disgrace, black thing, nigga. No, we smiled. And we did not move. We did not move when the spit came flying, rudely sliding down our necks, heartlessly clinging to our clothes, in our hair, but shame nowhere in the air. And we wiped the mucus from our pride and smiled. For we shall not be moved. We shall not be moved, just like a tree that's planted on this seat. We store sitters shall not be moved until our thirst is quenched, until our $5 bill tightly clenched, until we clutch the cold, damp, welcoming bottle of recognition, until we hear the sharp air and sizzle from a broken seal, breaking segregation into pieces, until we come into contact with the cold, crisp taste of Coke, burning our lips, singeing the stains of discrimination, until we feel our rights as human beings running down our throats and filling our bellies. Our thirst will not be quenched. So, Lieutenant, go on and call the coroner, 'cause some old ways are gonna die today. And it may take 1963 assassinations. We just might have to endure 1968 Memphis motel shootings until we reach that promised land. But doggone it, I tell you, on this day, on this hot and sunny 1958 day that the Lord has made, we ain't leaving till we get a Coke. Oh, we ain't leaving till we get a Coke. We are not leaving till we get a little old bottle of Coca-Cola. $5 bill. We've paid our dues. Beatings and lynchings. Oh, we've paid our dues. Still waiting for our 40 acres and a mule. Oh, we've paid our dues and then some. So, if you would kindly go back to the Frigidaire and get our respect, our equality, our freedom from this inhumane, outdated, overrated slave chain mentality, and my Coke, please. And thank you. Oh, and you can keep the change.
Honey, are you sure we're in the right place?
Yes, I'm sure. My grandpa Bruce Fisher works here, so I come to the History Center a lot. My great-grandmother's in this exhibit. Her name is Ada Lois Scipio Fisher. Her picture's over there. She was the first African-American to go to the University of Oklahoma Law School.
My great-grandmother's name is Clara Luper. She helped a group of kids protest against stores that wouldn't serve black people food, so the kids just sat down and waited and waited and waited.
Oh, I heard about that. They called it sit-ins. So that was your great-grandmother? I heard most of the kids were around our age, so they must have been really brave.
Well, this is what this lunch counter is about. And the video talks about the sit-ins and something called the Sanitation Strike, whatever that means.
Hey, China, do you know anything about this dress?
Yes, Nala. Well, yes. My great-grandmother, Clara Luper, also started the Miss Black Oklahoma pageant. This dress belongs to Sylvia Pollard Dragons. She was the first Miss Black Oklahoma.
Wow, sounds like your great-grandmother did a lot.
She sure did. She was a teacher, had a radio program, wrote plays, and was very involved in church activities.
Sounds like she really dedicated her life to help develop young people.
I heard that she would say, walk like you know where you're going and talk what you know what you're talking about.
I think I see my grandpa, so maybe next time I can show you this color-only chair that my great-grandmother had to sit in when she was in law school. Grandpa, over here.
Hello, it's good to be with everyone again to celebrate the life and contributions of Clara Luper, one of my heroes, one of the heroes of state history. Really, the Clara Luper story is one of perseverance, courage, leadership. And unfortunately, too many people remember her only for the sit-ins, especially that first sit-in on August 19th, 1958, when she and those brave young people walked into Katz Drug Store and demanded service, demanded that they be treated like everyone else in the community. Freedom. Well, Clara Luper was much more. She was a farm girl raised in Okfuskee County, smart, was able to graduate from high school, then attended college at Langston University. But the fact is that it was the only school in Oklahoma she could attend. It was the days of Jim Crow segregation, where an entire group of people, because of the pigment of their skin, were told that they were second-class citizens, where they could live, where they could shop, where they could go to school and prepare for a life of service. Clara Luper persevered through all of those challenges and graduated from Langston, became a teacher dedicated to changing the lives of young people. And moving to Oklahoma City, she became involved with the NAACP Youth Council. And there she found her voice. Her voice not just as an African-American pioneer demanding equality, but as a woman at a time when the glass ceiling for women was low and they were expected to stay in their place. Clara Luper was not one to stay in her place. She refused to back down. She said, we have got to make a statement for the general public, something that people will recognize and notice and hopefully change the way Oklahomans lived at the time. And when those young people in her youth council decided they wanted to also speak up, and even the young ones, they said, we want to make a statement. We are willing to sacrifice our own safety to speak up and to say this is not right. August 19th, 1958, they fulfilled their pledge and walked into Katz Drug Store. Well, for the next 6 years, they would continue this effort. Many sit-ins would follow. It was in a time and a place that was caught between changes in the law with governmental services that had culminated with Brown versus the Board of Education of Topeka, forcing government to allow African American students into school systems. The color barrier had already been broken down at universities. And here is government saying, yes, in terms of education, we're going to abolish the old idea of separate but equal and allow others in. But it still was not the practice at the grassroots level of everyday life in states like Oklahoma. And so the sit-ins were there to force that issue. Eventually, 1964, the Civil Rights Act passed, and suddenly the law was on the side of African Americans seeking equal opportunity in the places they could sit down at a counter and order a Coca-Cola. All of this had been won by people like Clara Luper, those sit-in kids, and others across the country demanding change. Well, the bigger picture of Clara Luper, though, is that this leader in the community would go on with a radio show with a voice speaking up for what was right in this community, a person who was willing to support young women in the community to say, we are as beautiful as anybody else, with the Miss Black Oklahoma contest, giving reinforcement that yes, we are equal, we should have pride in ourselves and in our community. And through all of this, Clara Luper knew that she was standing on the shoulders of others who had stood up and demanded a voice. That would go back to those runaway slaves who says, we will fight for our freedom during the Civil War, the 1st Kansas Colored Regiment that won the Battle of Honey Springs in 1863. She was standing on the shoulders of those pioneers like her parents and grandparents who came to Oklahoma looking for new opportunity, moving to the all-black towns where they thought they could find a little bit of freedom. She was standing on the shoulders of pioneers like Roscoe Dunjee, who organized the first chapter of the NAACP in Oklahoma in 1920. United, speaking together, much more forceful than individuals. Standing on the shoulders of Ada Lois Scipio Fisher, a young girl from Chickasha, willing to try to enroll at the University of Oklahoma School of Law, working its way all the way to the Supreme Court and changing the way that the court systems work in the country and pulling that first brick out of the wall of segregation. Clara Luper was standing on their shoulders, speaking up, never backing down, persevering, providing the leadership. We today stand on her shoulders. We today who are demanding equality, speaking up for Black Lives Matter, speaking up for including the story of African Americans in our story, the story of Oklahoma, are standing on the shoulders of Clara Luper, who decided that she would be heard, she would try to make a change. She changed all of our lives. It is up to us today to continue that, to speak up, to demand equality, to fight for freedom wherever we are. Yes, Clara Luper is one of my heroes.
Good evening. Just an honor and a privilege to be able to receive a copy of this particular book, knowing that Behold the Wall gives us an opportunity to be able to fix, change, and correct some of the things that we see, that we're confronted with on a regular, ongoing basis. Miss Luper was a visionary. She was a soldier, a warrior. She was committed and involved and dedicated to that she was doing. And not only did she do that, but she inspired, she encouraged. And so now, this day and time, that we need to continue that energy, that motion, that help, that support, the energy that she had. So many lives have been touched, so many lives have been changed. She changed the course of history. And too often, most of us have a tendency to ignore that major thing that she's actually done. And to receive a copy of this let me know that our God, Lord, Savior, and Master is in this mix. He's in this mix in some form or fashion because he gives us that continuous energy, that continuous drive to move forward, to fix, change, and correct things. In this day and time, in 2020, we're confronted with some of those same discriminatory practices. Systemic racism is still alive and well, and our challenge will always be before us. And as we continue to live our lives in this particular world, long as we live and breathe, we've got to continue to fight for something, to deliver something that makes it bigger than what we are, and to support, endorse, recommend, pump up, juice up, gear up others to get involved. I know everybody have a tendency to play on social media. Let that social media be a platform to fix, change, and correct where we at as a people, we as an organization, we as individuals, we as the world. Our world need motivation. We need motivation for some of that good trouble. Good trouble is fixing, changing, and correcting where we at, knowing that there can be different, should be different, and ought to be different, and let us play a role in making that difference. Miss Luper did that. She made that happen. And we want to follow in that same vein to continue her legacy, to continue to challenge an unjust, unequal, and unfair system. That's my charge. That's our charge. She's laid the goblet down. She's passed that on. And it's not all about us. It's about we. We fixing, changing, and correcting. It's about the kids and grandkids unborn. The things that we're facing is bigger than us. They say we're wrestling not against individuals, but against principalities in high places. We're dealing with a corrupt system that needs fixing, changing, and correcting. Behold the wall is our charge, is our pledge, is our challenge. That we are pregnant with possibilities, and until we take on those challenges, pick up the mantle, pick up the torch, and run this race as she did, we will fail humanity. We've got to keep that challenge going. We've got to keep our eyes on the prize. We've got to stay in the struggle to fix, change, and correct a jacked up, screwed up, messed up world. Miss Luper did that, inspired, encouraged, and we want us to continue in that vein of encouraging, inspiring, and encouraging. And I think when we do that, we'll be holding up the wall for all mankind, the wall that will never fall, because we got to keep faith, hope, and belief that we can do things different, things can be better, and we play a role in making them different and making them better. That's what we're here for.
Hello, I'm James Woods, and I'm a part of the Clara Luper Legacy Committee. I'm here today to receive an edition of the Behold the Walls, and I feel honored and privileged to be able to receive one of these books, for it has a lot of history that the NAACP and Clara Luper were involved in the Oklahoma City area. And I'm very elated to receive this book, for I feel honored and privileged to receive this new edition. And I hope each and every one will be involved and learn about the events and activities that the NAACP and Clara Luper were involved in here in the Oklahoma City. A few years ago, as a young man, I was involved with the youth council. During that time, Mrs. Luper was my advisor, and she was very instrumental in being able to teach us the right directions and the way to go in life. And I appreciate that, and I've taken that with me all through as I grew up. And one of the main things that I always instill in my mind is, as soon as you're of age, go and vote, because voteless people are hopeless people. And today, again, I just want to say I'm very elated again to receive this book of Behold the Walls here at the Oklahoma City History Center, making history receiving this book. I was a Minuteman commando in the NAACP. During that time, we were asked by Mrs. Luper to go to various business and various hotels and areas throughout the Oklahoma City and visit with the owner or manager of that company. My Pacific area was C.R. and Anthony's, which was a clothing store. And as a Minuteman commando, I and one of the other Minutemen went and visited with Mr. Anthony. After about an hour session, we were able to convince him to hire a person of color to be able to come to his establishment and work in the clothing store. And it was a great event, and I was very glad to be able to do that. And each Minuteman commando was assigned. I also went to various areas of amusement parks as a part of the NAACP, and was able to go and have protests about the not being able to go into the amusement park. Spring Lake Park and also Wedgwood Park was two of the areas that we were also involved in. After weeks of being involved there, we were able to have people of color come in and participate in the rides. And I was involved with many experiences in the NAACP and Mrs. Luper, and she was a great advisor and mentor, and I'm very appreciative of that and being involved. So this book, I can read some of the history that I was involved and also the NAACP and Mrs. Luper, and she was a great advisor and mentor, and I'm very appreciative of that and being involved. So this book, I can read some of the history that I was involved and also the NAACP.
Hello, everyone. My name is Charles E. Woods. I'm here to let you know why I appreciate this book, Behold the Walls by Miss Clara Luper. Miss Luper was my mentor. And if you ever met Miss Luper, you would never forget her. Miss Luper would always ask me to do something, and she went this way: Mr. Woods, I want you to do this. And you could never say no to Miss Luper. She had a way to let you know no was not in her vocabulary, and she didn't want to hear it. She wanted you to do it, and she made you feel like you were the only person that could do it. Nobody else could do it but you, because you knew how to do it. So this book means the world to me. Now, I have another copy because I bought a copy off of Miss Luper way back when she first put out the book. This copy I will probably give to my children and let them know how privileged they are to have this book, because it's so special. And it tells you what life is all about. And it lets you know how far we have come in Oklahoma. Because if you don't know your history, it will repeat itself over and over again. And I say to the people of Oklahoma, thank you, but we can still do better. And never, not ever, ever give up, because life is too short. And if you don't take care of yourself, nobody else will. And I thank you so much for this book.
I'm Dr. Samuel Craig, and I was fortunate enough in the early 1960s to be a part of a historic movement here in Oklahoma City. A lot of people don't know it, but the Oklahoma City Youth Council was actually the first in the country. And we demonstrated in various places all over the state, from Lawton to Tulsa and all around Oklahoma City. And so it is a pleasure for me to receive a copy of this book that's being given to the civil rights demonstrators of that day. It was plenty of us, a lot of us is going on, but there's still enough of us here to, receive this award and to be grateful for it. I had one, but as the years went by and I moved from place to place, I lost it. I think the benefit of this book coming out again today, with the culture of the country the way it is, and with the young people taking the lead role, I think we can go back to the early 60s, the civil rights demonstrations, and we can say that we planted a seed of discontent with the way the country was treating its minorities. We started with the restaurants and other establishments that refused to give us leeway in there. And so we started a civil rights demonstration we called the sit-ins. But I think what rose from that, the seeds that rose from that, are what we're witnessing today on television with the hundreds of thousands of young people who are just sick and tired of the discrimination, the racial bias, the prejudice, the Jim Crow rules that are still in effect, and all of the things that we're facing here in 2020. That's over 60 years ago that we're still fighting the same issues. And so receiving this book and making this book public again, I think will give some groundwork or some history as to where we started and really why we're here today. So I'm grateful, Brother Fisher, to be here to accept this award, and I just pray that those that are receiving it are able to share it with the younger generation, because this thing just didn't start when the present administration came on. This thing has been going on for years and years, under the carpet and under the rug, as they say. But now we have a group of young people with all the trouble we're facing in the world with the death of young black men. Black Lives Matter is a response from our sit-in movement. The women's movements are a response, our seed, coming to seed from our efforts. And all of the things that we're seeing with the other minorities, the Indian movements, the Cherokee tribes, and all of those things are people who finally got the nerve to stand up for themselves. And I like to take a little responsibility for it. We went to jail and got insecticide sprayed on us, and I think from there that idea grew of self-worth. In the 60s, as the 60s went on, came a phrase that I'm black and I'm proud. All of those things began to settle in our consciousness and in our culture, and we're not taking it anymore. And we're seeing it now with the hundreds of thousands of young people, both black and white, all minorities, all races, all colors, all religions are involved in this. And I'd like to just thank for being involved in this 62nd anniversary and for receiving this book. Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Ruth James Rolfe, and I am so pleased to be part of this special celebration and to take a few moments to share with you about what the book Behold the Walls means to me. First of all, just let me say it was an honor to have been part of the sit-in movement and the NAACP Youth Council when I was in school, and had no idea that so many years later anyone would be paying any attention to it. What the book Behold the Walls means to me is very, very special. First of all, Mrs. Luper was a history teacher. Now, she was not my history teacher because she was at Dungee and I was at Douglas High School. And when I took history, I really didn't even care that much about history. Probably if I'd had Miss Luper as a teacher, I would have thought a lot differently about it. But when I was taking history in school, it was mostly about people I didn't really relate to, the them, the others. And what to me is unique about Behold the Walls is because it's about us. It's about people that I know, people that I knew as I grew up. And actually, it has some of me in it, some of my dad in it. And I just want to share, first of all, I do have my own copy of Behold the Walls, and you can see it's very worn. The reason it is because I use it as a reference book. I had the opportunity in my corporate career to do diversity training, and it was a reference book that I used. And it was great because it had very real first-person information about our history. And I think that's one of the things that's very, very important about the book. When you think about the times that we lived and the times that we traveled and the different avenues that we had to take in order to do it, it was definitely an act of prayer and love and overwhelming community support. Now, not everybody supported it, but there was a great deal of support, and we were very thankful for that. There's another passage in there that talked about my dad, just in reference to his position in the NAACP, and it said that Leslie Brown, A. Willie James, Dr. E.C. Moon Jr., and the committee collected the money to pay for our food. A. Willie James was appointed as the NAACP Youth Financial Advisor, and he took the job very seriously. Keep in mind that as we were doing things, sitting in, and there really wasn't a lot of funds. We were not funded by an agency or an organization or an entity of the government. But the funds that we received were basically funds of love that came from the community. And as you read through the book, you will find that so many individuals, many of whom are not named that we know because we don't read their names in the headlines and places like that, but they were so very important to the movement. The other thing that I really like about this book, and I'll say it in closing, is it is wonderful for me to share it with my great-grandchildren. When they can look at this book and they can see, oh, there's my great-grandmother. And when they see my dad, their great-great-grandfather. And last year when we were visiting the History Center, I brought them by and showed them the display of the sit-ins and other things there. And lo and behold, on the wall was a picture of my father standing in a crowd with some others, Senator Porter and several others. But anyway, I pointed at him and said, there is your great-great-grandfather. And they went and they looked at it in awe. And I think that just highlights to me the value of the written word as Mrs. Luper told it in Behold the Walls. Because at the beginning of the book, she talks about the importance of sharing this with generations to come. And because of her, and because she wrote this book, I can share it with them in a very personal way to their generation. And I am hoping that they can share it with their great-grandchildren someday. Thank you very much.
I'm Dr. Carlos Hill. I'm an associate professor and chair of the Clara Luper Department of African American Studies. And it's a great honor to be able to pay tribute to Clara Luper, a great civil rights leader of her era, and I think for all time. I had the great fortune of meeting Marilyn Luper and her family very early on in my time here in Oklahoma. And through learning about Clara Luper and her journey as an activist, as a community activist, I, as well as my department, decided to name our department in honor of her great work and her deeds in Oklahoma City, as well as throughout Oklahoma. And so Clara Luper is someone that's not just special to me, she's special to my students, my faculty, and my staff. And we love her because of what not only she did for Black people, but for the world. Many people don't know that in 1958, August 1958, Clara Luper and 13 students organized a sit-in of Katz Drug Store in downtown Oklahoma City. And at that time, every business in Oklahoma City was segregated. And so Clara Luper, and particularly her daughter Marilyn Luper, and 13 others, youth, decided to protest the segregation of Black people in white-owned businesses downtown. 2 days after the protest, Katz Drug Store integrated their store in Oklahoma City, as well as the more than 50 stores that they owned across Oklahoma, Kansas, Missouri, and Iowa. And so one brave act of protest led to the integration of an entire restaurant chain in this country. That is Clara Luper's witness, that is Clara Luper's legacy, and that is something worthy of remembering. And so on the 62nd anniversary of the Oklahoma City sit-ins, I think we should all remember that Clara Luper and the 13 brave students that joined her changed the world. We should remember that Clara Luper was not just an Oklahoma civil rights activist. Clara Luper was a national activist and a figure on par with Dr. Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Rosa Parks, and other influential African American civil rights leaders.
62 years ago, Clara Luper and 13 members of the NAACP Youth Council walked in the Katz Drug Store on Main Street in Oklahoma City. They walked up to the lunch counter, sat on a bar stool, and ordered a Coke. They were immediately denied service and told they had to leave. They were also reminded to place an order, it had to be through the back door of the drugstore. They did not leave, and August 19, 1958 was the beginning of the sit-ins in Oklahoma and one of the earliest in the United States. Because they wouldn't leave, some of the customers began harassing them by pouring Coke, water, and coffee on their heads, spitting on them, calling them niggers, coons, monkeys, and threatening them with physical violence. They remained seated, endured the insults and the threats and the abuse. They eventually left later on that day, but came back the next day and the next day. Other members of the NAACP joined in the sit-ins, and within a week, Katz senior management announced it was desegregating all Katz stores in Oklahoma and the United States, close to 50 locations. The sit-ins did not end with Katz Drug Store. For the next 7 years, the NAACP picketed restaurants, department stores, amusement parks, and all known segregated locations. Mrs. Luper and the original 13 youth council members set the standards for nonviolent sit-ins in Oklahoma City. I admire and thank them for their courage and perseverance. I joined the Youth Council in the summer of 1960. By then, every national news broadcast would show Negroes in southern states being beaten with clubs by the police and white counter-protesters, attacked by police dogs, and sprayed with water hoses. Fortunately, we did not experience that level of violence, but we were concerned for our safety. Later that year, Mrs. Luper asked 20 young men in the Youth Council to monitor all activities during sit-ins and marches. We were asked to watch over the sit-inners, make sure that they returned home safely, and watch out for aggressive counter-protesters. On one instance, a protester threw a monkey at Marilyn. However, that monkey was returned to the sender very post-hastily. We adopted the name Minuteman Commandos and wore blue jackets. Because of our visibility, we were watched closely by our adult male advisors. Monitoring sit-ins was not our only mission. We were asked to apply for jobs or request services at local businesses. Those that refused us applications or denied us service were eventually picketed. Oklahoma City was not the only city where we were active. Tulsa and Lawton asked for our support. My only arrest during the sit-ins was in Tulsa. We also eventually went national. We took two full bus loads to the March on Washington. Being with 250,000 protesters, listening to Dr. King, future Congressman John Lewis, Executive Director Roy Wilkins, and others was life-changing. A lot of people that began this journey are no longer with us, but are missed, and we are reminded of their contributions often. Clara Luper, adult advisors, original senators, commandos, NAACP members, and everyday people that chose to support our cause are sorely missed. We honor their memory and their participation with a moment of silence.
Why should I feel discouraged? Why should the shadows come And why should my heart feel lonely and long for heavenly home? When Jesus is my portion, a constant friend is he. His eye is on the sparrow, and I know he watches over me. His eye is on the sparrow, and I know he watches over me. Oh, you know that I sing because I'm happy. Yes, you know that I sing because I'm free. Whoa, his eye is on the sparrow. You know, and I know he watches over me. Let not your heart be troubled. His tender words I hear. I rest upon his goodness. I lose my doubts and fears. Though by the path he leadeth, one step that I may see, his eye is on the sparrow, and I know he watches over me. His eye is on the sparrow, and I know he watches over me. Yes, you know that I sing because I'm happy. Yes, you know that I sing because I'm free. Whoa, his eye is on a sparrow. You know, and I know he watches over me. Yes, you know that I sing because I'm happy. Yes, you know that I sing because I'm free. Whoa, his eye is on a sparrow. You know, and I know he watches over me.
It is my distinct privilege and honor
to be able to introduce our guest who will be sharing with us as a well-renowned and known person, a civil rights leader, one who has led this nation and has done tremendous work, is known by world leaders as well as presidents and celebrities and academicians as well. As a student at Bishop College, one of the privileges that we had as students of religion and philosophy, we would study what were the civil rights leaders of our day. And we would often call the roll and list of those who were the leaders in our country and were leading our civil rights movement at the time in the late 70s. And topping the list always was our guest speaker. He's pastored a number of churches in Minnesota and in Westchester, Pennsylvania, and now the renowned and prominent Third Baptist Church in San Francisco, California. He has led a number of world organizations and has been instrumental in keeping the NAACP on target with addressing social issues, as he has been active not only in his community, but also in this nation. Allowed to come to the White House by Presidents Barack Obama and also Bill Clinton. He is one of God's most prominent leaders in our nation, and we're privileged to be able to have him to share in this 62nd annual sit-in recognition banquet in time. So it's our time to be able to really introduce the man of God who will come and bring to us the message on today, the world-renowned civil rights leader and activist, Dr. Amos Brown, pastor of the Third Baptist Church in San Francisco, California, where he's a prominent figure in that city as well as what he is doing in our nation. We're excited to have him as a part of this 62nd Civil Rights Sit-In acknowledgement of those who have made it happen for us. And we're excited about the legacy that has been plowed by these who were willing to sit in at the Katz Drug Store here in Oklahoma City, which started the sit-in movement around this nation. We're excited to have as our special guest Dr. Amos C. Brown. Hear ye him.
The sit-down movement of Oklahoma City, Oklahoma Youth Council of 1958 that was very ably led by Miss Barbara Posey as president of the Youth Council, and that sage, sagacious, sassy, sensible, and soulful sister, Clara Luper. She and Barbara had the distinction of leading a group of youth council members. I know I've taken some time to celebrate tonight, but I want to set the record straight in order that oncoming generations would know that before 1960, there was Oklahoma City, followed by Louisville, Kentucky, and Wichita, Kansas. But Isabella Blair got the spirit in 1959 in New York City. That I hope that young people in the Black Lives Movement today would sit down and get a historical perspective and realize that the evil they are fighting today has been around a long time. The movement in Oklahoma City was defined by engagement. It was a movement that did not make room for solo leaders. The family was engaged. The church was engaged. The schoolhouse was engaged. The young people need to sit down and learn from the elders. The elders need to give their wisdom and the elders need to respect the strength and the stamina of youth. But we must work together. We had empathy and love for each other. And our movement was nonviolent. There was no fussing and cussing. If you were to be a part of the movement, you had to be disciplined. You had to go through role play. You had to make sure that you were committed. Our sit-down movement in Oklahoma City and throughout this nation under the aegis of NAACP was a 5-star movement of enlightenment, engagement, encouragement, empathy, and excellence. And that's why we were empowered to work until the day ended. God bless you. Celebrate my 5-star sit-downers. Thank you. Have a good evening.
My name is Amaya Harris, and I am a sophomore at Putnam City West High School. I was welcomed here today to speak on behalf of my African American classmates within all schools. In too many classrooms today, our culture and heritage are minimally recognized and appreciated. What is brought up about our race is the basics. Our ancestors and the past milestones are being represented by the same few incidents, rather than appreciating all we have to offer in classrooms. Now, yes, what's taught is still very important when it comes to the learning of my culture, but we have repeatedly been told the same handful of stories by our educators. I believe it's important to teach all world history correctly. Oklahoma history goes so deep within the confines of the African American race, and the subject is oversimplified and unexplored when it comes to what's actually taught in history classes. Clara Luper was an educator and leader of the Oklahoma sit-ins that ended segregation right here in our own home state. The majority of the audience tuning in already knows who she is and the astounding work she accomplished in the great state of Oklahoma. Accomplishments such as ending segregation, receiving a BA from Oklahoma's own Langston University, a fine teacher, and an inspiring civil rights activist. Sadly, there's still a large number of students my age and very possibly your age as well who don't have a thought towards Mrs. Luper, simply due to the fact that our education system will not teach proper African American studies. Although it's important to recognize the educators now who are pushing for more of African American culture, both historical and contemporary. I find it very comforting to have those educators having my back, fighting so hard for my color. Clara's importance to myself and my heritage are beyond measurable. The name Clara Luper symbolizes all of the people who participated in the sit-in movement. Clara Luper once said, "This is the day these people dreamed of, and some of them aren't here anymore. The day that we would be recognized. I have respect for them. I'll be thinking of all those people." Due to Clara being a young African-American woman and a major force to be reckoned with, she accomplished more within a small time frame than many do their entire lives. Luper, I feel, would be a true inspiration to the children of all ages, if only they knew of her and her glorious moments. As a student myself, it's only right I get the opinion of my peers, who have never had the opportunity to speak their mind on the topic of education. I asked many of my fellow classmates and social media followers this: why or why not do you think it's important to teach about Black/African American studies? A 2020 graduate replied with, "It gives Black students an identity and heritage." A fellow sophomore: people of color need representation within their communities and their classrooms to learn about the impact we've had on the world. Lastly, a teammate of my own: If we were to go more in depth with African American studies, I believe it will open kids' eyes on the racial injustice and inequality that no one ever acknowledges. It shows that people of color have been and still are oppressed and that white privilege exists. It shows that the racism Black people went through during slavery still exists to this day, minus the fact that we were kept in chambers then. Just those 3 comments alone opened my eyes to a flaw in our education system. I want to change that and push the education system harder about this subject, because I know it's just not myself that feels my race is lesser of a race than others. It should be an obligation to make sure students of all races, ethnicity, and sexualities feel comfortable and a place to spend the majority of their time in. What's taught in classrooms today has led to me being told it has made kids uncomfortable in situations. They feel excluded because all they hear is negative comments about being black, as well as feeling that they aren't as equal and will never be seen as one. Mrs. Luper is just one of many separate African American figures that need to be talked about within these 4 walls of a classroom. I believe she is a cornerstone of Black Oklahoma history. The education system has failed us as a race and failed at treating us as equals when it comes to my heritage and culture. Clara is an inspiration and could be to many more. Her name deserves to be in school books.
What's up? My name is Jabee, and I am so honored to be able to speak to you today. I am a member of the Clara Luper Legacy Committee, and thank you for joining us on our virtual anniversary. When I was in school, I never saw the name Clara Luper in any of my history books. I don't remember the teacher mentioning her in the brief skim through the Civil Rights Movement or even Black history. Luckily for me, I grew up in the same community where Clara Luper lived. I also have family that were close friends with her and also marched and participated in a lot of the protests that she led. In 2017, Miss Clara Luper's daughter asked me to be a part of the Legacy Committee, and it's been an honor and a privilege. My mission since has been not only to spread the message of Miss Clara's work, but also to continue on the legacy. It's 2020 now, and the climate of our world seems to be upside down in many ways. Miss Luper was a leader in the Civil Rights Movement and did it with so much grace. I'm thinking about the opportunities that we have today, not only to follow in her footsteps, but to be part of the legacy and be part of a revolutionary and group of people who are world changers, and that's what she is. So I just want to encourage you to learn more about who she is, what she did. There are so many people still today who were involved in those sit-ins, who are involved in all the work still to this day. And I just really appreciate being able to be in that group. And thank you so much. It's the 62nd anniversary. I know that I wasn't even a thought whenever she did her first sit-in with those students. But it's so awesome to think that, they sat down so that I could be here and stand up today and share that with you. So I appreciate you. Thank you so much.
The sit-in movement started after a group of young people from Dungy High School had the opportunity to present the play Brother President. Brother President was the story of Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. and the Montgomery bus bar count. The play was written by my mom, Clara Luper, and in the audience that night that they presented the play, Herb Wright, who was the director of the National NAACP Youth Division, was in the audience. He was so impressed with the play that he invited the young people to come to New York City to the National Convention of the NAACP and to present Brother President. Now you must understand that most of the kids never had an opportunity to leave the state of Oklahoma, and some had not been to Oklahoma City. Well, when they made the plans to go to New York City, they decided we needed to see how it was in other parts of America. So they took us the northern route. And we were able to go in to a restaurant and sit down and order a Coke or eat a hamburger, where in Oklahoma, we've never had that opportunity. We would go downtown to shop and buy anything we wanted. But when it came time for us, after we spent all our money down there, we had to go to the back of the restaurants and eat out of a brown paper sack. So you can imagine how excited we were to have the opportunity to sit down and eat in the restaurant. I want you to understand that during that time they had colored bathrooms, colored water fountains, white bathrooms, white water fountains. Everything was outlined where you needed to be, and it was against the law to go any different. Well, we went to New York City, and Harriet Tubman said a little bit of freedom is a dangerous thing, and it felt good to know that you could be treated like somebody. And when it was time to come back, we had to come back through the South, facing the age-old discrimination and bigotry and hatred. So when we got back to Oklahoma City, the members of the NAACP Youth Council and students from Dungeon said no more. No more. We negotiated with the Downtown Merchants Association, and they said that if they would integrate their restaurants, that they would lose their business. So finally, on August the 19th, 1958, I made a motion in the NAACP Youth Council meeting that we would go down to Katz Drug Store and we would sit and we would sit and we would sit until the walls of segregation came down. We're here to celebrate today because Oklahoma City had the longest nonviolent civil rights movement in America. We're celebrating today the young people that gave up their Saturday morning cartoons to walk the streets and picket lines of Oklahoma City. We're celebrating today for the young people that were spit on, cursed, talked about, ridiculed in this community because of the stand that they took. We're here to celebrate today because we believe that there will be a better tomorrow. They said, how did you make it? How did you all make it? And how did you turn the other cheek? And how did you believe in the passive, nonviolent resistance? It's really simple. We made it because of what we were taught. We were taught to believe in the rain when the rain didn't fall, and in the sun when the sun didn't shine, and in a God that we've never seen. So today, let's celebrate. After 62 years, we're still standing.
for our closing prayer. Lord, bless our hands, our minds, and our souls as we go forward, continuing the work that Miss Clara Luper started, fighting for justice in a nation that seems to show no justice to its darker-skinned people. Lord, as we continue the nonviolent fight against racism, guide us because we stand on the backs of great leaders who have gone on before us. They were, like John the Baptist, preparing the way. People such as Clara Luper, mother of the Civil Rights Movement in Oklahoma, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., the most influential leader of the Civil Rights Movement, Rosa Parks, who would not give up her seat on the bus. Lord, help us to continue knowing that freedom is not free if there is undercover social injustice and racism, still belittling, killing, and stealing from any race of people. As John Lewis's mother said, once you learn something, no one can take it from you. Father, we ask that you go with us and help us to continue to spread the knowledge that Jesus is Lord and that freedom is not free if we are all not being treated rightly. Lord, we thank you for this gathering. We thank you for being here today. We ask that you protect us, keep us, and watch over us. In Jesus' name, amen.